Hey,
Hey
hello.
guys, hey.
What's up, everyone?
Hey,
We're back for another weekly community hangout, this time with the lovely and super talented Meg Ladoodle.
hello mate.
Welcome, Meg.
Hi everyone.
This is like the British invasion at the minute, isn't it? Like, very,
Northeast England has got coming in here.
yeah. So, guys, let us know, where are you tuning in from?
Wisconsin.
Leave us a quick comment, because you can see a bunch of
Melissa
people
from
who've shown
Tennessee.
up. Up, Melissa. So while you guys are showing up, we're going to give it a few minutes before we jump in. But Meg, you're going to be sharing your 100-day challenge with everyone today. I'm really excited because this is something a little bit different. We have people coming on and chatting and sharing their screen and that kind of stuff. This was something really game changing for you, right? So in a nutshell, what on earth is a 100-day challenge?
Oh, in a nutshell, it's when you really apply yourself to doing something every single day. And this, in my case, it was illustration. And the reason I want to share it with everybody is because I felt like it massively changed my creative career. It gave me a huge boost in confidence. It was kind of like finding myself. I know it sounds cheesy, but I was looking for something. I knew I could do something, but I couldn't quite find it because I was too busy sort of on the hamster wheel trying to keep client work going and that kind of thing. And I sort of have looked back through it because it's been about a year and a half since I did it. And where I documented the process through doing it, there's lots of little nuggets of information there that I thought might be helpful for other people. So I've kind of pulled it all together into a presentation rather than it getting lost in the depths of time, in the hope that it will help some other people have a similar experience, is what I'm hoping for.
Fantastic. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, as I say, I'm really excited, and this was something we literally saw the transformation, because you went from we talked to, I think, either on, did you come on the Honest Designer show, or we just answered your question?
Oh yeah, I came on the show. Yeah,
you did. That's right. And I think at the time you were in that state of flux where things felt really quite uncertain. And then coming out the other side of this challenge, you just seem to have complete clarity and purpose and get more traction in your business. So I'm very much a believer. And yeah, so you're obviously going to go a bit more in depth today about how that played out and what that looked like.
Yeah, I certainly will.
Over to you, Meg. Take it away. I think you've got a presentation for us.
I have a presentation, yeah. So I'm not going to be able to see any of the comments, I don't think, whilst I'm doing the presentation. So right, if there's anything particular, is that a good thing?
No, not very positive, yeah.
So if there's anything particularly interesting or any questions, just give me a shout and I'll try and answer them as we go. So let me just work out how to share my screen.
Love your colours, brilliant.
So can you see that?
Yes, beautiful.
Great. So yeah, as I've already said a little bit, I'm going to share this journey with you of how drawing every day for 100 days gave me this huge boost in my career. And yeah, I'm really hoping that by sharing it with you and some of the little things that I learned along the way will help other people really find themselves as creatives. So I used to feel like a mediocre designer, and I might still be a mediocre designer, but I really don't feel like one anymore, which is a really, really great feeling. You know, it's kind of half of the way to get that confidence, really. I do have moments of like crippling self-doubt sometimes still, but I generally feel much more confident. And I don't have this feeling, which having been thinking about it for a couple of years, it was what I started to call my creative straitjacket. So what is a creative straitjacket? One of the things I'd love to know at the end of the presentation is if this kind of resonates with other people or if it just sounds completely crazy. So to me, it was this feeling of knowing that you can do so much better in your design work, but just feeling really, really restricted by something and something's holding you back. and sort of every project sort of starts really full of excitement and big ideas, and this is the project that's going to make you as a designer, and just sort of scrolling through Pinterest and you're really excited, this is going to be the one, and people are going to look at this design and say, wow, you're a good designer, and can you do some good design like that for us? But by the end of the project, you'll happily never see it again. The project didn't go the way you wanted it to go, probably because the client didn't get your amazing creative vision, and or maybe you just didn't quite pull it off. You're not quite sure. And you see other creatives, and they sort of have this really strong style, and they seem to live and breathe design. And sometimes you wonder if maybe they just kind of deserve it more than you anyway. And it's seriously frustrating. And every project feels like you're going to sneeze, but then you don't, and it's horrible. So can you just, Tom or somebody, make a noise just so I can be sure that you're still listening?
We are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you, because I can't. Yeah.
We're just listening to you.
We're enraptured.
Because I can't hear you. I was slightly worried that I was talking to nobody.
Sadly.
So I think there probably are some people who don't feel like this. Like there's probably that girl or that kid at school who could draw really well. I think maybe she doesn't feel like this, but I do think a lot of creatives do feel like this, especially at the beginnings of their career. So just to go into a bit more detail of what like it would look like for me personally, I've been paid to do design and illustration for a really long time now, since I graduated in 2004. And I didn't do a design degree, by the way, which I think it's always good to point that out to people.
Me neither.
And I've been freelance for 4 years this time, and it's going really well. I'm earning good money, and I've built up a sort of local network, which is great. But so much of the time, I still feel like I'm wearing this creative straitjacket. And with every single job, I'm trying to inch my way over to a style that I like and that I feel really proud of. But the reality is that even with like branding projects, when you've got control over the whole brand, you still have to design appropriately for the brand's market, and you still have to please the client. And for me personally, clients often didn't get my vision, and a lot of my more exciting designs were rejected. And that was a bit soul destroying when you've put so much into something, only for the client just to not really get it. So,
Meg,
yeah,
just checking. Can you hear us okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Perfect. Is this a presentation that you're going to give somewhere else, or have you put this together just for today?
I was asked to do a talk a little while ago, and I started putting it together then. But then that meetup, it was a new meetup, and it didn't happen. So I sort of had it already written out, and I have actually pulled it together for today because I want to be able to give it. To be able, yeah. I was hoping to test it out on you guys, basically. So thank you for being my guinea pigs.
I was going to say no pressure at all, but we'd love to potentially put a written version of this on the blog or something to help get your name out there, because these graphics are just incredible. Like I'm nodding along here because they're so familiar, I think, to all creatives.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody resonates with these feelings as a creative who's had any kind of creative career.
That's good to know. I think people put on a good game face a lot of the time, and everyone else looks like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this one quite a bit. So you end up in this vicious circle of, you have a portfolio of work that you don't really like, and that attracts clients that like that work, and you can't really get off this sort of hamster wheel of bad clients because you're trying to earn a living. And I think the same can be said for people who are working in agencies and in-house designers, because you can't get a job somewhere who values the kind of design that you like doing if they can't see that work in your portfolio. And I also had a dirty secret, which is that I couldn't draw, and I'd been selling illustration services for a really long time, but I felt like I couldn't actually draw. I'd been spending most of my life like desperately avoiding playing Pictionary in case someone said, "You're an illustrator, be on our team." And then discovering that I could barely draw a stick man. So just for transparency, this is some of the illustration work I was doing before my creative challenge. And it's not bad illustration, but it was all vectors put together with shapes, and I couldn't draw any of this by hand, and it took me a really, really long time because I was never able to like sketch out ideas first. The client would always say, "Oh, send over a few sketched ideas, and then we'll choose one." And I used to think, I can't sketch. That's going to take me forever. So it was quite stressful for me. And to some extent, I was often just kind of copying other illustrators' work, like mashing up other people's styles to make just enough changes so that they felt unique for my client, and which is a pretty normal way to work, I think, and to learn. But when you get to the point where you've been doing that for like 10, 15 years, you start to feel like a bit of a fraud.
I mean, these, Meg, like, they are perfectly nice illustrations, but compared to your ones now, they feel a bit more kind of eye stocky, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But
they don't have as much uniqueness to them, I would say.
But at the same time, sort of very commercial from a corporate perspective. So I can see how anyone would fall into that rut of, because this is how you make money with many corporate clients.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a selection of the work that I was most proud of at the time. It was the most exciting any of my work got. And most rest of it was much, much more bland than this.
Yeah. No, it's really nice, but it does feel more shape-based, as you say. It doesn't feel as free-flowing as your current work.
Thank you. I don't know, is that a compliment?
It definitely is. Like, you've definitely always had talent, but I love going back in people's careers and just seeing how much they've evolved.
Yeah. So what I wanted was to be able to draw with my hands, like to be able to pick up a pencil and draw like a real illustrator. So we're always getting given loads of advice, aren't we, as creatives? And what I'm going to say going forward isn't anything new. We're always hearing this one, create something new every day. But what do we create? Where do I start and how do I start was how I always felt. It just sounded like a nice idea, but I didn't know how to do it. And this one's one of my favourite quotes. Inspiration exists, it just has to find you working. But I used to think, but I am working. I'm working really hard. I'm working every day. And when inspiration does find me, my client or my boss just rejects it because they're scared of it, especially when you've got such a when you love bright colours the way that I do. A lot of my corporate clients were pretty scared of that. So in November 2017, I was in this place where even just doing a sketch to send to a client like this one would take me like a couple of hours. And I was desperate to be able to draw properly. So I bought an iPad and I started listening to the Honest Designers show.
Yay!
Yay! And you guys, Dustin and Lisa and yourself and Ian were talking a lot about this daily challenge thing, and then Dustin started one himself, and it really appealed to me. One of the suggestions, which I think you made, Tom, was to do like a drawing diary, which suddenly really appealed to me because I used to keep diaries as a kid, and it seemed to be something maybe I could actually do. So I started the 100-day drawing challenge, and I called my account Crappy Illustrations.
I remember this. Yeah.
So I started the account and I didn't tell anyone I was going to do it. I think I followed Dustin, and that was about it. And I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want any pressure of anyone to see how bad this like designer and illustrator of 10 to 15 years experience actually was at drawing. So I vowed to post something every day, no matter how bad it was. And I decided to start with do something that was relevant to what had happened to me that day. So I'm going to show you the first illustration now. So please don't laugh. In which this one.
Right. I remember this so well now. This is really nostalgic.
So this particular illustration, I felt really frustrated at work that day because I found myself working on a project that I really didn't want to work on, and it didn't seem to matter sort of how much I tried to make it look like I didn't want to work on it. The client just didn't get the message, and that seemed to happen a lot because I didn't really have any self-confidence to say no to things. And this first drawing, I thought my primary objective was to be able to just sketch people as quickly as possible. From memory rather than looking at like a reference picture or something. And then on the second day, I was working on a logo and brand design, and a friend pointed out that I'd used the same colour palette for at least the last 3 brand projects. And I realised that I was in quite a design rut. And then on the third day, I cut my son's hair using a YouTube tutorial. Oh, that's the last one. And over the weekend, I reflected on who I was at home. And each day I'd try and improve just one little thing from the previous day. So like if the hand was rubbish or the way I drew the hair was no good, I'd try and do better tomorrow. Rather than getting stuck on one illustration and trying to make it perfect, I just think I'll just leave it now and I'll move on. And tomorrow I'll make sure that that particular bit of it's better. And I started to feel like I was improving. In fact, the caption on this one, which I've made bigger here, I worked out that at this rate of improvement, I could be 48% less crap in a year's time, which felt quite encouraging.
Meg, do you remember, I don't want to skip ahead here, but when we had you on the show,
and
we talked about your progress, we had a conspiracy theory that you'd actually always been an incredible illustrator and you were just faking being a beginner because your rate of progress was so rapid. We were like, that can't be real. Do you remember that?
I do. And I felt really worried about that because this is why I wanted to include the sort of vector stuff at the beginning, because I've got that experience of building illustrations with vectors. And I guess because of that experience, I was able to quite quickly combine the two, the experience.
Have you seen the thing about, I've been banging on about this to our team here, but about the kind of compounding of incremental improvements. And the theory is if you improve 1% each day, in a year's time, you're 37 times better.
Wow.
3,700% better than when you started. And I think that's what we're literally about to see unfold because it evolves so much.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that feeling of, I know when you look back at a whole year, 365 days seems like a long time, but as it goes, one illustration a day is tiny, and you can just change a little thing each day, and incrementally you just develop really quickly. So every night I would draw something and I'd try and improve one thing about the style each day. And like I would try not to change too much from each illustration so that I didn't have to completely reinvent it each time, but I was still experimenting with various different things. So I'd like refer back to how I drew the nose on the last one, or perhaps I like the hair on the previous one, that kind of thing. And I found in doing this, I started copying from myself rather than from other illustrators. So I was kind of developing my own style at last, rather than constantly looking at other people's work and trying to replicate it. So I've tried like other kind of side projects before and generally don't stick to them, but there's something that happened during this one which made me stick to it, which is that a few random people started following me, including Dustin, which was brilliant.
There is
yeah,
comments.
Yeah.
And they just like left these lovely comments, like, you know, just encouragement really. And they were complete strangers, apart from one person, my best friend, was the only other person I told about it. And they were giving me tips and telling me they identified with what I was saying. And I guess because I was being genuine about it all, people identified with it. And at times, even I'm talking like a handful of people at this early stage, perhaps not with this illustration, but some of the earlier ones. And I kind of felt accountable to them because I was putting the numbers on the illustration, like number 20 of 100 or something. I felt accountable, and I also got a bit of a thrill from the engagement with them. And that's the difference between just sitting at home and doing it on your own without showing it to anybody, I think. So I kept going. I posted every single day, including Christmas Day. And I was starting to get really tired. So I drew about how tired I was. And things got a bit dark at times. This is me in a huge grump, trying to learn how to use Procreate.
You look quite happy though. Yeah.
And I became addicted to coffee that particular year. It was the year that I discovered coffee. And sometimes, by the time I posted the picture, it was usually around midnight. I just had no words left. I was just exhausted. But as I pushed on through, I started to think of it in a new way, this challenge in a different way. I started to think of it as like training for a marathon. And I was thinking that athletes train for a marathon. If someone's doing some kind of sporting challenge, people understand that you have to keep practicing and practicing to get good at it. And sometimes athletes get injured. And I'm not advocating like working until you're broken, never am. But I definitely learned that like blood, sweat and tears is what gives you real progress. So by day I was working at the time for a client who was using me as a puppet, and it was hugely frustrating and still seemed to be the case for quite a long time. And by night I drew and drew and drew and drew and drew. And then something started to change. So this is the key thing really for me, is that my drawing skills were improving, which you kind of hope so if you're drawing that much. But something was starting to change in my day-to-day design work as well. So I'd started to consume design and illustration constantly because I was looking for inspiration for my next illustration. And so where before I'd spent hours of my life looking at Facebook at other people's kids and like what they'd eaten for lunch and stuff, I was now scrolling through design social media, and I was kind of immersed in it. And this may be normal for lots of designers, but it hadn't been for me. I kind of used to switch off at the end of the day and not think about design until the next day. One moment.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I can just see the color palette emerging so much as well. You definitely like your colors.
I love colors. So I felt like it was kind of becoming part of my identity, and this had an impact on my graphic design work. I was starting to feel more confident. And then around this time, I won a contract for a job that was a pretty big deal for me. And it was a really challenging project. It was like a 6-week contract in-house at a company. And despite feeling under a lot of pressure during the contract, I walked away from it with an absolutely glowing testimonial, and finally like a project that was that one where I'm going to show everyone and feel really proud. And there really wasn't much about it that I would change. And I felt really respected by the client, and it was a first. And I'm sure it was this like change in me, this kind of feeling of confidence that was growing, that perhaps I was quite a good designer after all. So, and that was a graphic design project, not an illustration project. So I think it's interesting the way this illustration work was feeding into my graphic design work as well. So it was all great, but I was getting pretty exhausted. And I started to think about where am I going with this? Like, how am I going to earn some money from it? Because I can't carry on working all these extra hours, which I think is the point that I spoke to you, Tom. And I was just facing burnout really, and thinking I can't just keep working every night until midnight. It's just crazy. So got to day 100, and almost around this time I had an idea and things started to click into place. And suddenly this quote like made sense to me. So despite not knowing where this drawing challenge was going, I just blindly persevered with it. And in the end, I was just starting to wonder if anything would come of it when inspiration finally hit me whilst I was working. And this was my 100th post, and it wasn't very interesting, but this is because I was already thinking about this idea that I'd had, which was to create a vector pack of illustrations. So a lot of my clients are like tech and product companies, and I've noticed this trend of like little people building UI and things in their marketing. I think it's become quite a popular trend now, but at the time I was just starting to see it, and I decided to create this vector pack that designers could buy and use. The Little People creator. So from that point onwards, I just started creating illustrations that could be part of that pack. And I also, at that point, around 100 days, hit upon like a color scheme that I suddenly was like, this is my color scheme. I really love this color scheme. It feels great. I want to stick with it. So I started to build an identity around my illustrations. And this felt like a huge step forward, like a piece of me that I knew was there but had been hiding. Like breaking free of that creative straitjacket was like amazing.
Meg,
yeah,
just thinking back, do you remember at what point we had a conversation where I said you have to change your name because you call yourself Crappy Illustrations? It's not exactly exuding confidence or representative of your skills.
It was just before you read out my listener's question on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I think I asked you, should I change it? And you said, yes, definitely.
And, Meg, I've actually used this product and it's just great fun to use. So thank you. It's just really lovely. Yeah, I've used it before. And yeah, it's really,
that's really nice to know.
Really cool. Design work.
So,
lovely.
The Little People scene creator, sorry. I launched it and on Design Cuts, and I made a bit of money out of it. I'm not like a millionaire now, but I made enough to feel my time was covered. And I always think that if I wanted to put more effort into it and market it more and build upon it, I could make more money out of it. But the thing that was really important to me about it was that I was then able to use it as a portfolio piece on my own website. And that enabled me to win some really great illustration commissions from clients that I just wasn't getting a year ago. So this is an example of one of them. I won this really big contract to do 70 illustrations for this company called Taxfile.
That looks awesome.
And they found me through my Instagram profile, which I think is really interesting because I don't have a huge following. A big following, like 1,600 or something, but compared to the people with tens of thousands, that's nothing. But they found me and did this great project. And then this is another example. I felt like I was getting projects that were like 100% my type of project now.
You mean you put out the type of work that you wanted to attract?
Exactly.
Hallelujah.
I put it out, but also I found a way of the whole point in it is that I didn't know what that work was before I started this process. Like, I didn't know what I could do, basically. I didn't know what I was capable of.
Yeah.
And also, once I had this like Instagram profile full of all these illustrations and the Little People Scene creator on my website, I was suddenly able to like point people at that stuff and say, look, this is what I can do. And suddenly I was getting so much less pushback from clients. Like, so many of my projects were really easy. People came to me because they wanted something and they got that.
Yeah.
It was
That's one
so
of the
even
biggest benefits to having a style, actually.
Yeah,
They come to you because they want exactly that, and as you say, there's so much less friction then.
Yeah, because they already know what they're going to get and they're happy with it.
exactly. And I think a lot of this is just about finding that style. So even with this one, even though this is quite a different style, it's still quite brightly coloured, and you know, I feel like clients are giving me a lot more freedom. So the other big change in me, so that was how I changed from a business point of view. But the other big change is that through doing all these illustrations every day, so I originally was aiming for 365 illustrations, but after 100 days, I realized I couldn't keep going for that long. So I stopped it. I think I stopped at a year. I stopped counting at a year, which was 168 illustrations. And through doing that, I built up that habit of drawing like several times a week. And it was now an ingrained habit, or like an addiction. Like, I really, really wanted to do it. And I wanted to draw at every opportunity just for the joy of it, which is a huge change in me. And I think that this is a point I wanted to make actually about social media being this really bad, addictive thing that we shouldn't be, this bad for us. But I feel like this particular case shows how you could harness that addictive nature into something really positive for yourself. Because there's no doubt that every time you post something and you get some likes and comments, you get this thrill, and validation as a creative is just hugely important.
That's really good and interesting outlook, I think, because you're right, it gets a really bad name. But if you're on there and it's just making you feel like an imposter, or you're aimlessly scrolling through brainless content, which is just wasting your time, I can understand that. But you're basically talking about it from a public accountability perspective, which breeds consistency and output and volume and then ultimately improvement.
Yeah, definitely.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, it's that kind of swapping that environment for something that used to be negative, and sort of looking at other people's lives and just mindless stuff, really, for something much more valuable. So I've pulled together like 8 takeaway points, because I really hate it when people talk through something and then you're like, oh, well, that's all well and good for them, but how can I do that? So I've tried to pull a few points together that will be helpful. So I just want to encourage other people to go on this kind of journey as well, really. So the first thing I'd suggest is to pick something just because you love doing it. You don't have to know at the beginning or even halfway through how it's going to help you, but just sort of pick it and start doing it and commit to it, and just be patient and see what it evolves into. And if you're working your ass off, then you're doing it right. And of course, like, don't burn out if you can. Sometimes you need to stop and, watch Love Island. But generally, if you're sweating a little bit, then you're doing it right.
I'm seeing some inspired people in the comments, Meg.
Pardon?
It's very cool. I think I'm seeing some inspired people in the comments, and we might have a few people embarking on their own 100-day challenge.
Yay! I'd love, I mean, I was going to say this at the end, but if anyone does, please like connect with me on Instagram. I'd love to follow your progress. It's just really exciting when people do that. So yeah, I was going to say, set yourself like a finished line. So you know that it's a period of hard work, but it's temporary. So set yourself a goal that works for you. So for some people, you might want to set yourself a really achievable goal, like 30 days. But for me, the way my brain works, to set like a really unachievable goal, like 365 days, kept me going for much longer than I would have done. And I think I knew deep down that I'd probably stop at 100 days, but I at least was going to try to get to 365 days. And if it's not working, don't beat yourself up too much. You know, get to your goal and then stop and move on to something different. And immerse yourself. This is one of the key things, I think, is just immersing yourself in design and illustration has like a huge knock-on effect, because you're building up that visual reservoir, so that when you're under creative pressure in your day job, you have plenty of reserves to draw on. And I think you're more likely to have original ideas if you're always consuming inspiration, rather than like just looking for specific examples just before you start a new design project. You often, if you're constantly consuming design for inspiration, you often don't know where you've got that particular idea from. It's just from all the stuff you've been consuming. Whereas if you go onto Pinterest just before you start a new project, it's quite hard not to just copy something that you've seen for inspiration. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we said before, try kind of replacing social media, replace it with design social media as much as you can. So try everything once, like I did this with this peculiar illustration. I'm not saying like you have to do potato printing, but you can if you want to. And just try all sorts of things, because if you're creating something every day, you're only going to waste one day. So if you don't like what you've done today, just forget it and move on, because you can do something different tomorrow.
Quite possibly the cutest octopus I've ever seen.
There's some stuff in my Instagram feed that I really don't like, and I would really love to delete it. But I just feel like it would be ungenuine to delete it, because it's part of the process. But there's some stuff that really makes my toes curl. But I'm really glad I tried it, and because it sort of helped me figure out what was working for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just like the posterity of it. I always tell people, don't delete your old posts, because it's so affirming to look back and just see how far you've come.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My son often just rips up pictures if he doesn't like them halfway through. I mean, he's 9, but it's that kind of thing. Don't, because one day you're going to look back on it and it's all part of your journey.
Yeah.
Artwork.
Pardon?
Keep everything.
But try and let it evolve slowly. So just change like 1 or 2 things each day, so you don't feel overwhelmed. So keep what worked from the last illustration or piece of design that you've done, and change something that didn't work, but keep everything else. And then incrementally over time, you're going to like craft a style that's your own style.
Love it.
Yeah.
Meg, Donnell just said in the comments, you're like a therapist. This is just what I needed.
Oh, that's so sweet.
It's not, I think, quite quiet, but it's because I'm just listening.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I am talking quite a lot.
In a good way, Meg. In a really good way. I'm just like, yeah. No?
I feel like I'm watching my favourite TV show. We're both just kind of nodding along here. I know you can't see us.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, keep going. It's like training for a marathon, and people train for sporting events all the time, and this is the same thing. So like an athlete, sometimes you'll have bad days or maybe even like bad weeks, but just keep going and don't let it get you down, because eventually you will see improvement. You've just got to push on through. And yeah, discover the true creative self. Discover your true creative self, because I think that when you've gone through a process like the one that I'm explaining, you sort of come out the other side knowing yourself quite a lot more. And then this shows through in your work and your self-confidence, and your potential clients or employers will feel that and understand you better, which ultimately leads to a more harmonious relationship with them and just a generally more joyful design career. Which brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening to me. And yeah, I'd love it if people, like I said earlier, if they decide to do a challenge like this, I'd really love to watch them and encourage them, because I need to give some of that back.
It's fantastic. Thank you,
Meg.
That was
incredible.
Just really uplifting. It's lovely.
I'm going to try and get you back on my screen. 1 minute.
There we go.
Yeah, if you hit stop sharing, we get you back. But
oh yeah,
everyone, I can see you're already doing it. Leave some comments what you think about Meg's journey. For me, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the main
that's great.
thing. It is just inspiring, isn't it? Yeah, really inspiring and uplifting and positive. It's great.
Thank you. I just hope that.
Oh yeah, honestly, so pleased, Meg.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you very much for your part in it as well, Tom. Honestly, it gave a real spark of inspiration.
It's
And
your
obviously,
sweat and tears, though.
pardon?
It's your blood, sweat, and tears, though, that made it happen.
Yeah, that's true.
Really, really cool.
Yeah, people saying awesome, so helpful. Mindset is everything. Amazing, inspiring.
Oh, bless you.
Putting their pencils out as we speak.
Yay! I think that thing about just not worrying about where you are now and just keep pushing on and pushing on and pushing on, because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't do it.
Sure.
That's when I was doing it. People used to that saying used to pop into my head all the time, which was it start today or something?
Yes.
Do you remember that one? And it's so obvious, but I'm so glad I started when I started, and today is today for everybody. So it doesn't take long.
I was just setting up a quick poll here. Is there anything?
Yep, so I'm just adding a poll. If everyone checks it out, bottom of the video, click on polls and leave a vote. Normally we would do this at the end, Meg, where it's like, where can we find you? But there's a shiny green button below this video. And that was awesome. I just want to pause for a second and get every person on this call to go and follow Meg on Instagram, because her journey is so inspiring, but I know you're just getting started. I think over the next few years, you're going to blow up, and well deserved.
Bless you. Thank you.
So we've had 5 people vote so far, but seriously, everyone get involved. So green button below the video, pop on over, give Meg a quick follow, see the numbers going up, and then come back and leave your vote.
It's so interesting, because my first contact with you was seeing the product after you'd finished it. Little people seeing creator, so it's so nice to see your journey to get there, to sort of create that style and the ownership. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think obviously everybody goes on this kind of journey, and a lot of them might do it when they're at university or something, studying art. But because I didn't do that degree, I did media studies.
Yeah.
I didn't have that opportunity to really explore. And so it's hard to know how to do it. So I'd really love to kind of give a bit of framework of how to do that.
Yeah, it really is.
And we're also, if you're happy to answer a few questions, Meg, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I can do my best.
I can see we've got a few people that already follow you after you were on the Honest Designers show, but thank you to everyone that just went and followed Meg just now. We're going to keep shouting you out as well, because like I say, you deserve all the success in the world. I'm going to challenge everyone. If you haven't thought about it, let us know in the chat. Are you feeling inspired to actually go and do a 100-day challenge right now? And if so, what's it going to be? Is it going to be 100 lettering pieces? Is it going to be 100 illustrations, sketches? So give us some details. That's awesome, Heidi and Rachel.
I actually have one little extra thing to say actually about, because I've recently done a new challenge which was really hard, and there's an extra bit of advice that I'd like to just give to people. If they're looking to develop a style, try not to restrict yourself too much. So the challenge that I recently did was an alphabet, and I wanted it all to be the same style. and it's been really, really hard to stick to. So if you're wanting to like find your style and go on that kind of creative journey, try not to restrict yourself too much, but set yourself some kind of goal, like a time-based goal.
Love it. Meg, we might have lost you on video, by the way.
Oh.
Something strange has happened. Worse.
When did that happen?
30 seconds ago. Strange. It's all right. We'll figure it out. We can hear you. That's the main thing.
Okay.
So I'm doing an animal character drawing here, which is quite interesting.
Nice. A lot of people doing Inktober as well, which is always really fun.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Rachel's going to actually try video, which is cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Even I did this back in the day where, what was it? I think I called it Daily Tom. This was like years ago, and it was I know, highly original. And it was literally just like trying to give a bit of marketing advice for creators, but it was every day. And so I'd have ridiculous hair in some of them. I'd be half asleep. I'd be sat in my car, but I stuck to it every single day. And I wouldn't have done that without it being some kind of challenge. Hey, you're back. Hello.
I think I need to set myself one of these as well, because I've been meaning to do this for quite some time on Instagram myself. So you've inspired me to actually possibly get up and actually do it. Find some time in the schedule.
Yeah. Also, if anyone's feeling kind of nervous, they don't want to mess up their Instagram profile, or they don't want people to see it, do a private one that you haven't told anyone about to start with, because that just gets you started, and then when you're happy with where you're going with it, you can start telling people about it.
And who knows?
But don't keep it private from me.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, if you do this, tag up or @mention or DM Meg. Same thing with Design Cuts. We're on Instagram @Design Cuts, and just let us all know that you're working on it, because it can be a really, really cool thing, and we can all inspire each other, and give feedback, and just support each other. So we all keep doing it. They're fun though, honestly. Like when we first mentioned this on the podcast, and you said that's what inspired you to start, Meg, and we had tons of people doing this. So there were certain hashtags. I think it was like hashtag 100-day challenge. Loads of creatives were out there, putting in the work every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we've got a few questions then. We may pick your brain if that's okay. Paul says, what should I consider when deciding on a challenge project so he knows it's achievable?
Other than sort of things I've already said about, it depends how your brain works, whether or not you need like an unachievable goal, like I had with 365 days, just like spurred me on to get as far as I could. Or whether or not you're the kind of person who wants to feel like it's 30 days, but it's achievable. Yeah, I think, does that answer the question? Perhaps, could you read it out again?
For yourself. Customize. Can you read it out again?
Yeah, do you want me to read it again, Meg?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure I answered it properly.
What should I consider when deciding on a challenge project so that it's achievable? So, I mean, you just touched on the fact you use a finite amount of time. Maybe don't make it too narrow, I think you were saying.
Not too narrow. Another thing is, I think you need to accept that for that period of time, you're going to have to make some compromises. So perhaps for me, it was the evening. I didn't watch TV in the evening for a while. Yeah. So that's the time.
Time limit?
Yeah, you could set yourself a time limit. Yeah, but definitely think that you need to replace something in your life for a little while, but it's a limited thing.
Yeah, something has to give, right?
Yeah.
As with anything. Meg, I'm pretty sure you would know this. Let us know in the comments. Did you guys realize that Lisa Glanz has done a 100-day challenge? Lisa Glanz, the super popular illustrator. Do you know the one I'm talking about, Meg?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I remember her doing that. She used to do the 5-minute drawing, didn't she? Is that the one?
Exactly. Yeah, because someone just asked, can they set a time constraint? She did. Yeah. I think it literally is 5-minute. Yeah, 5-minute drawing.
I think what she can do in 5 minutes though is pretty staggering.
Oh yeah,
it's incredible.
It's like it's in 5 minutes.
Yeah, look.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So she would do every single day for 100 days, and You can see on this Instagram, she's got 123 posts.
Amazing.
A 5-minute drawing. But she's done it as well. That's been good.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they're a big thing, these challenges, and they really, really work.
Mm.
Nice.
I think the thing that can be challenging is other people around you who aren't designers understanding what you're doing, which is why I like to use the sort of athlete or training for a marathon thing.
Yeah, it is, because if you were training for the London Marathon, I'm sure everyone will get behind you and support you.
Yeah.
But when you're head down on your iPad. So Heidi says, I would love to hear your drawing ritual. Did you have a ritual? Did you light some candles, turn out the lights,
Yeah.
and get to work?
Pretty much I would get into bed at about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I would, if I didn't already have an idea, I'd probably go onto Instagram Pinterest and scroll through. One of the biggest things early on I was looking for was color schemes rather than styles. And I would sort of scroll through until like something kind of sparked my interest and get an idea. And sometimes that would take like a few minutes. Sometimes that would take 40 minutes to come up with an idea. And then I'd always have music on in my ears, always, so that you can feel like really epic when you're drawing something. You have to have some really, really epic music on in the background. And yeah, is that a drawing ritual? I guess so.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zay as well has a question. In fact, you want to take this one, Mr. Matt?
It says, yes, looking at your portfolio, I saw that you have several illustrative styles. What was your process in transitioning to another style? Did you look at tutorials on how it's being done, or do you just see it and know you can do it already?
Looking at my website portfolio, I guess, is what he means. Yeah, I guess there's some styles that I probably just know, like Lisa Glan's style, for example. I just know I can't do that. It's just too unique. And yeah, but I guess there was a lot of trying out lots of different things. And I think if you were to scroll back through my Instagram, there was a phase where I tried out some really realistic style drawings. Yeah, so just trying lots of things out.
Yeah, I think that's always the answer, isn't it? Just keep doing until something clicks.
Yeah.
And for me, when someone's found their style, is when you can look at a piece and know it's them without seeing any name associated with it. And I can do that with yours from a mile away. Absolutely. Now. Like, that's Meg the Doodle. Your original.
Thank you.
Guys, have you got we've got to take one or two final questions there.
Oh, Rick's point about flow state there.
Do feel free to pick. Yeah.
Just that sparked something for me, because that's something I didn't know about until I started this. And it's that addictive flow state that actually it's almost like, I don't want to say like taking drugs, because obviously, but it's like an addictive Zen state that you get into. And the more you do it, the more you want to be there, and you don't like to be dragged away from it. It's a really kind of addictive thing. And it's a really nice thing to be addictive to. It's quite a healthy thing to be addictive to.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, flow state, in my mind, is the polar opposite of creative block. And creative block sucks. So flow state's pretty good by comparison.
And I guess in your own style and you're in a comfortable place, that really, really just mitigates the chances of ever getting creative block, because you're doing what you love and what comes naturally.
Yeah, much more.
Angela said, look at your necklace. It's the same colour as your colour palette.
Yeah.
Is that deliberate?
I did go for a phase where I wanted to dress like my illustrations.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I think I bought it then.
Commitment to branding. I love it. Well, Meg, honestly, this is one of my favourite hangouts that we've had. Like, such a beautiful presentation. As I say, if you're willing, we would love to, get that all over our blog and inspire more people. So I just think it's so beautifully put together, so inspiring. A
takeaway for everyone, I think.
Yeah, massively. So hopefully we're going to be seeing some 100-day, 30-day, 7-day, whatever it is, challenges, and tag us all up But
love to see
everyone, let's show some love for Meg in the comments. Pretty incredible. Nice. And
thank you
for being so giving with your time.
Yes, thank you, Meg. That's fantastic.
Thanks everybody, thanks all for listening to me. I felt like I went on a bit, but it was nice to
No, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it really was. We got a lot of inspired people.
Yeah.
And also go on our marketplace and search for the Little People Creator.
Yeah,
I think it's called.
Good fun. Really good fun.
Yeah, Angela says Tom doesn't say that often, and it's true. Not just saying it to appease every guest. That was truly really special. So we appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
That's all right.
Thanks.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right. Take care, Meg.
Great.
Take care. Bye.
Everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye.
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 Bye.